You earn brownie points by doing XYZ, by, listening to the gospel, believing in the gospel, all of those things. But it's almost so out of your control. It makes sense that it then spills over into, your eating habits and all of that, and the stress on your body and on your mind.
Right. And it was so complicated because I grew up thinking that everybody was born evil and God had to make you good. And so my body was evil. And so the thought of like treating my body well or taking up space in the world just didn't seem like something I deserved.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So I guess that anyone who wasn't baptized was considered evil.
Yeah. Anyone who didn't believe and who wasn't baptized, was evil.
Welcome back. We are on today with my guest, Kelly Marie Johnson on I'm Too For This Shit podcast. I'm Angie S., the founder of angies.com, link in the show notes, where I coach and consult women on their health and skincare, whilst keeping it fun, irreverent, and most of all, practical and realistic for their own lifestyles. So I started this podcast because I wanted to talk about well-being beyond food, skincare, and meditation. Even though those are still really important, and definitely important to me, I wanted to have guests on to talk about well-being beyond those things, because things like sex, dating, relationships, and other areas of health and feeling like a misfit are also part of well-being and a different way of empowering women, but also men. So today I have Kelly on as a guest. She's an incredible artist who went from being a fundamentalist Christian who even went to Asia to be a secret recruiter for her church, to then end up being in an open relationship where she discovered she was gay. So at 31, Kelly's lived. Let's begin. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me today. When we spoke last time, you've had quite a life, so I definitely can't wait to dive into it. But first, please introduce yourself, how old you are, where you live, and what you do.
Okay. I am Kelly Johnson, and I'm 31. I live in the United States in the Midwest in Missouri. And I am a painter, I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, like an art teacher, and a writer. And I guess that pretty much sums up most of me.
Okay, cool. And so this is your first podcast, right?
Yes, it is. And I'm a little nervous.
Okay. So, I'm very honored to be popping your cherry. It'll be fun.
I think it will.
Can you tell us about your background, the community you grew up in?
Sure. So I grew up in Illinois, also in the Midwest. And I grew up in kind of like the perfect family, like mom, dad, brother, beautiful house, small town, like just very ideal. But my family is very conservative Christian, evangelical Christian. So some people might like think of it as like fundamentalist Christian. And this was in, the early 90s, late 90s when I was growing up in their house. And so there was, at least in the US, there was this very like interesting kind of Christian movement that was sort of like tied up in politics, like right-wing politics. And my parents were very involved in that. And so I grew up in this little church, down the road that was kind of like my home church. And we were there, I don't know, like twice a week at least, and my entire life kind of revolved around that and the Bible and the interpretation of the Bible that was preached by my church. So I would say that like really shaped the way I grew up in a lot of ways, as far as like how I thought about myself and how I thought about the world around me. It was very like black and white, like you're good or you're bad and you're in or you're out and all that kind of thing. So it was like kind of anxiety producing actually from an early age.
So because you come from like, like you said, like what can be perceived as quite a fundamentalist community, the anti-gay, anti-choice and so on. And you are someone who, the reason why I brought you on is because you are someone who, you did get married to a man, you have a child, beautiful child, and now you're gay and you're living with your girlfriend, which is completely different turn to what was expected of you. So can you sort of explain some of that trajectory, like how you pulled yourself out of this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a long story.
Go ahead. We have time. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a long story, but I think it happened slowly. Like, I think I was just always one of those kids who I overthought everything. I always had a million questions. So as a kid, I would have to go to these like Bible programs. It was called Awana. So I would have to go to that every week in addition to church, and they would make us memorize the Bible, and we would get like little awards for learning Bible verses and all that stuff. So I always had questions about what I was learning, and I never felt like I was getting really satisfactory answers. So I remember even as like a 7 or 8-year-old, I would be like, well, okay, so I know I have to believe this if I want to go to heaven and like be okay. But like, also it kind of doesn't make sense to me on a heart level. So I had a lot of like kind of internal conflict, I guess, growing up. And then once I hit about 12 or 13, I started really feeling the effects of anxiety and depression, which do run in my family. And I felt like the only answer I was getting from my parents and from my church was to trust God more. And basically, if I wasn't a happy, shiny person, like I was doing something wrong. And it was that my relationship with God was broken. That was really hard on me, I think. So I internalized a lot, and I wrote a lot, and I read a lot, and I thought a lot. And through the course of that, I think I read some things that really challenged what I had grown up believing. And so I went to college, which my parents said that I had to go to a Christian college. So I did. And when I did, it was a Christian college, but it was a lot more like liberal, and there were professors and students who had different backgrounds and more open minds than what I had encountered previously. So I actually was able to like go to some of those classes and hear things that like completely rocked my world. And like, I was so scandalized, but it was really good.
If you grew up in it was very cocooned, you were very, wrapped up in a specific world when you grew up. So when you went to college, which was still a Christian college, but by the sounds of it, you got to meet people from different backgrounds that you probably hadn't met where you grew up. Is that correct?
True. Yes.
Yeah. So how was when at college, you said that you heard things or learned about things that shocked you. What was the Kelly then? How did she react to, because Kelly now is different, but when you were so cocooned, like what was your reaction?
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, I was completely scandalized. I mean, I remember like one professor telling me, because I had grown up believing God cared about every single little choice I made, and he had an opinion on it. So I remember one of my professors being like, I don't think God really cares whether you pick the blue shirt or the yellow shirt. And I think some of it's just, up to chance and whatever. And I was angry. I was so livid. I was like, how can you say that? Of course, God cares what shirt I choose. Like, of course. So I had a little hissy fit every now and again. And then I was dating my boyfriend. We got together when we were 13 and 15. So we were dating all through high school and college. But I remember I was on the phone with him one night because he was at a different college. And I just broke down crying. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm so anxious right now. Like I'm thinking about how God, like, he chose me to go to heaven, right? Because that's what the Bible says. Like, he chose certain people to go to heaven, but that means that he also inadvertently chose people to go to hell. Like, how can I believe in a God who did that and does that to people I love? And so I just had a complete breakdown. And he basically said, like, you just have to have faith. And basically, if I didn't have faith, he would break up with me.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with faith, like in the blind faith, it's a lot of pressure to put on someone. And I think, I actually got a question. Mm-hmm. When you said, that he picked you to go to heaven and other people to go to hell, how did you know, like, how was that taught to you? Like, how did you know some people were going to hell?
Well, so we were taught that, everybody either goes to heaven or they go to hell. And like, if you hear the message of the gospel and you choose to believe it, that means that God picked you, basically, that he like opened your heart to receive the gospel and believe in him. But like, if you heard the gospel and you said, no, I don't believe it, whatever, like God had not chosen to open your heart. So like those people were going to hell.
So this is really interesting. So this is almost like, it's almost like saying like the infidels. I don't know how you say it in English. Yeah. So it's basically, if you didn't believe in the same thing, if someone didn't believe in the same thing, they were going to hell. That's basically what you were taught, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of pressure. Oh my God.
It is. And it's anxiety
question. Yeah. So how did you go from, obviously, so then your boyfriend says, if you don't have faith, I'll dump you.
Yeah.
Because I guess he doesn't want to be dragged down to hell with you.
Exactly.
That point, in his mind. Yeah.
Right.
And I guess he can't help it. That's how he was brought up. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did you go from that? Like, how did you transcend that?
I think I just squashed it down, because I thought it was a survival thing. It was like the only way I can survive and have the life that I need to have is to have this blind faith that everybody else around me seems to have. So I just squashed down all my doubts. And I think that led to a lot of mental and physical illness. I struggled with anorexia for years, and I was angry, and I was on edge all the time and anxious, and it was really hard. But I was able to pass as a very good believer. Yeah. So that's how I got through the next, I don't know, almost 5-6 years.
Yeah. It makes sense as well that you'd had anorexia, because it's a way of control. It's people who don't want to be out of control. They need to control everything. And so you couldn't control, you had all these questions, and it seemed like chaos, even though it was really orderly, because it's you have to do this, you have to, you earn brownie points by doing X, Y, Z, by, listening to the gospel, believing in the gospel, all of those things. But it's almost so out of your control. It makes sense that it then spills over into, your eating habits and all of that, and the stress on your body and on your mind.
Right. And it was so complicated because I grew up thinking that everybody was born evil and God had to make you good. And so my body was evil. And so the thought of treating my body well or taking up space in the world just didn't seem like something I deserved.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Is that so I guess that anyone who wasn't baptized was considered evil?
Yeah, anyone who didn't believe and who wasn't baptized, was evil.
So okay, so then you had all this anxiety, and then what happened next?
So what happened next was I graduated from college with an art degree, and my longtime boyfriend, we got married, and I moved to the same city that he was in. And it was crazy. I mean, we had dated long distance for 7 years, and we were finally living together, which was in one sense great because he was my absolute best friend. And so living together was wonderful. But I just found myself kind of this little codependent shell of a person. I didn't know anybody in this city. I didn't know what I liked or what I thought about anything because I'd never been allowed to like or think about things. And I was so afraid of everything that I was having complete meltdowns all the time. And we were dirt poor, so I couldn't afford mental health treatment. And so I was unmedicated, and I didn't have counseling. I was just crying all the time. And we would go to church, and I would hear the sermon, and I would just come home and cry for 3 hours, every week, because I felt so bad about myself and what a horrible person I was. And it was a lot of clinical depression that I interpreted as me and my sin.
Yeah. You thought it had to do with your faith, not being a good faith.
Yeah.
Not have, what's the word? Not being a good believer.
Right.
Yeah. That sounds a really healthy community.
Yeah, I know. Right.
But it's I guess it's, and at the same time, it's not about casting judgment. Obviously, you only know what you know. I mean, there was loads of things as well that I did wrong. I didn't know until someone pointed.
Of course,
or you don't know what you don't know, and so, right. So how? I was going to say something a little bit silly, but because I don't know if you consider yourself bi or gay.
Right.
From our conversation, I understood that you consider yourself just loving women.
Right.
And so I was thinking that if you had a long distance with your boyfriend at the time for 7 years, you probably didn't matter so much, because if he was your best friend, you're happy to just chat on the phone, and then maybe like the physical side isn't so much of a thing. I don't know. Or were you even allowed with your faith to even have any interaction like that with him?
So you're right and no. So I mean, like when we did see each other, we would maybe kiss a little and we would hold hands, and that was about it. And he was always way more excited about it than I was. But I thought that like he was just like a touchy person, and I like wasn't so much of a touchy person, and I just wanted my own personal space. Like that's what I attributed it to. I didn't know any different. And the way I had grown up, it wasn't that they were anti-gay, it's that they didn't believe in being gay. Like gay people don't exist. Being gay is a choice that you make. And not being gay is a choice that you make. So for me, I just thought like anybody who chose being gay was just kidding themselves and they were sinful. So like I didn't even know that being gay was like a thing that I could be, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it honestly never entered my mind. And like, I look back on it now and it's so funny because like, yes, I did have crushes on like my friends at school, but like, I had no idea. I had no idea.
So you had crushes on your friends at school?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's like a couple that I can think of now, and the way I wrote about them in my journals back then. And it's so funny and obvious to me now.
Yeah. Yeah. But I guess you didn't know what those feelings were because they were never, you were never exposed to them in that, in the community you grew up in, because it just wasn't a thing.
Right.
So how did you come out? Like, first, because obviously that boyfriend becomes your husband.
Mm-hmm.
So can I ask you, like, how, and I can only imagine that must have been like one of the hardest thing to come out to him and to your family. Or I mean, I don't even know if you have. I mean, I don't know. So, I mean, because I'm guessing obviously it sounded like you had actually a good relationship. It sounded like you were really good friends. So, how did this all happen?
Okay, so this was several years later after we got married. This was probably 5 years later, maybe.
So by that time, you've been together for how long?
We've been married for about 6 years, I think. And we've been together for half our lives, 10, 15 years.
Right. Yeah. It's a long time.
Yeah, a very long time. And we thought we knew pretty much everything about each other. We were, very close. But no, it came about because it's kind of funny. So I'm like I said, like I overthink everything, and I like to just like toss around things in my brain, even if I think they have no application to me. So I had already come to the position by that point in my life that I thought that like God was cool with people being gay. Like I was like, yeah, I think, he's probably cool with that. And then I, over the course of time, I eventually went from there to like deconstructing my faith and not being a Christian, which is a whole story in and of itself. But kind of as I was going through that whole transition, I had like heard a podcast about polyamory, which I had never really thought about before. And the concept of polyamory anyway. So I was listening to it and I just was asking myself, like, how do I feel about this? Does it seem okay? And I was like, yeah, cool. It seems cool. And then like 2 days later, my husband comes to me and says, hey, so would you ever consider like opening up our relationship? I was like, okay. Sure. Why not?
So I guess he was also going around thinking about things too, He
was, yeah. And it was just something we had never talked about. And I guess he had been kind of thinking about it more than I knew at that point. But we decided to try it. And so it was funny because I was kind of like the little, he was really excited about it. And I was just kind of like, I don't know, like I wasn't into sex at that point very much because I had a small kid and I was tired and I was sick and I was just like, I don't know. So he kind of had to encourage me like, go out, just try sleeping with someone, see how it goes, see if you hate it, see if you like it. So I did, and it was awkward. And
so also when he said to open your relationship, it wasn't to do a threesome, it was to you dating other people?
Yeah, like we would both date other people independently.
So who dated someone else first?
I think he did.
Okay.
No. Okay, well, he did, but I didn't. Well, I don't want to go there. I don't want to get in the messy details. Okay. So I did first, technically, I guess, once we opened up our relationship. He encouraged me to, so I did. And it was like good and weird and exciting and like all these things, but like the sex wasn't great. It wasn't like, I was like really excited about that and like mind blown or whatever.
And was that with those men? With those men?
It was with a man, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it was just the like freedom of it, that felt kind of exhilarating.
Well, yeah, you've been together half your life since you were like at 12, so for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, no one will blame you for that 100%. Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't. Yeah.
I don't know. It was weird. And I guess I slept with one or two other people, and it was every time it was just very weird and chaotic and exciting, but also like kind of felt wrong in a way, like not like religiously wrong, but in me, it felt wrong.
Oh, yeah. But that does. Yeah. I mean, even someone like me who's not religious, it can sometimes feel wrong too.
Right. Well, but at that point, I had never known how to listen to my body or my intuition. So I was just like trying anything and then like asking myself, like, how did that feel?
Yeah.
So it was a whole new experience for me in listening to my body. But there was one day where I was just like, you know what? I don't know if this is working for me. I'm not into it. And he was like, okay, so don't take offense to this question, but do you think you might be gay?
Wow. Yeah.
And huh. And I wasn't offended. And I just like stopped and thought, and I was like, you know what? I have absolutely no idea. I've never thought about it. And he was like, what do you mean you've never thought about it? I was like, well, I've never thought about who I want to have sex with. And he was like, well, surely like when you're fantasizing, you must think about it. I was like, no, I've never had a sexual fantasy. And he's like, wait a minute, what? And he's like, but what about like masturbating or, whatever? And I was like, no, I've never done that. He's like, wait a minute, what? Because I was like 26 by this point, I think, 27.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had no contact with my physical self in that way. And so he encouraged me to just try going on dates with women just to see if I would like it, which I did. And it was whatever. And then I met my girlfriend.
What do you mean? It was whatever.
I don't know. It was like I went on a couple dates with women and it was perfectly fine.
Okay.
It was just not,
Oh yeah, you're not going to feel a connection with every single person you're going on a date with. So yeah, no, I understand what you mean. Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I was complaining to him one night, and I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm just like asexual. Maybe I don't like women either.
Yeah.
And so I was actually supposed to go on a date in like half an hour. I was like, maybe I should just cancel, whatever. Oh no, I'll go because I said I would go. So I went, and it was like love at first sight. I mean, we were. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was perfect. And we're still together almost 3 years later.
Oh, wow. So, wow. Yeah. He really is. He really was like, I mean, probably your best friend because he's the one who helped you find her. Yeah.
I mean, if he had never said that to me, I might have literally never known that I liked women.
Yeah. Yeah. And how was this when you met her and there was like this special that connection, that love at first sight or lust at first sight, either way, like a really good feeling, right? So what did that do to you? How did you feel about that?
Oh my God, it was so exciting. I came home and I felt like a little like teenager. I was like telling him about like, I have butterflies in my stomach and I'm just so excited. And it was again, like that freedom that I felt like, oh my gosh, now I know this huge piece about myself that I've never known before. And it was scary and it was exciting and I just felt really good mostly.
Yeah. You were falling in love, which is the nicest feeling ever.
Right. It is. And it's so also nice. Like, it was like I was falling in love and at the same time I was knowing myself in a way that I had never known before.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you then, I guess that's when afterwards you separated with him and now you're with her?
Yeah, it took a couple of years because we had a kid and we wanted to kind of take it slow, but our divorce should be final in a couple of weeks, actually.
So wait, I'm forgetting the main thing. How did your family react?
Oh my God, it was horrible. It's still horrible, to be honest.
Yeah.
I probably told them I think she and I had been together for about a year. And I I decided like, okay, I need to come out, but first I need to tell them I'm not a Christian so I can like soften the blow.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was a lot to come out about.
Wow,
So
that is a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So my family doesn't deal with conflict very well. So I decided that I would send them an email and tell them that me and my husband were no longer religious and we were welcome, or they were welcome to talk to us about it. But I wanted to send the email so they could think about it first and have their reaction and then come talk to us.
Yeah.
So they did, and they were really, really unhappy. I mean, just so unhappy. And they visited me shortly after, and it was just, there were a lot of tears from my mom who cries, and there was a lot of not tears from my dad who never cries. But he, they talk to me like I'm a child still. I'm 31, but they talk to me like I'm a child, and I'm a child who's messed up and is in trouble. So there was a lot of that, and a lot of telling me that they were sad because I was going to hell, and my child now was in an unsafe environment, and I had no moral compass, and I was lost.
Yeah, but I mean, their reaction comes from a place of fear and love, right? They're just because they love you so much, because they're still stuck in their, well, I say stuck, they're still in their own belief system that you grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had that transition like you have.
Yeah.
And so for them, it's like their world's coming to an end, but it will just, it takes time. I'm imagining you didn't expect them to be happy about it, right?
No. I was expecting it.
So how do you, because one of the things that really sort of, that stands out about you, to me, what stands out about you is how you've come from such like an extreme environment. And you've gone to not another extreme, but for them is a massive extreme. And actually, even for most like traditional Western families who are not extremely religious, coming out as gay, being an artist, all this stuff, those are already things that are hard to come out with. But you had to, and on top of that, you had to come out saying you're not Christian anymore. All of these things, you had to really learn how to just listen to yourself and be yourself and live your life regardless if they were about their reaction, their thoughts about you. And even if they shun you, because, in some families, they will shun you. Like, how do you shut that out and just live your life? Or how do you shut it out? Like, how do you handle it?
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately it was the same survival mechanism that led me to keep believing in the first place. Because I believed for so long because I was afraid that if I didn't believe, I would go to hell and I would lose my community. But somewhere along the line, like if I was being honest with myself and I had all these questions about, who this God was and how he treated me and other people. And like, I felt so sick from those questions. And I felt like, honestly, if it was my choice to serve this God that I thought was a monster, or to live a life apart from that and maybe lose my family or my friends or my community, like I was going to go with the latter because I was suffocating,
Yeah. So you're saying that you did not want to serve a God that you were portrayed as being a monster just to keep your family, is what you're saying.
Exactly. I couldn't do it. My friends and family have always described me as pathologically honest. I can't fake things. Like, when I'm unhappy, you know exactly what I think about things. Like, don't ask me a question you don't want the answer to.
That's my motto. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm just really straightforward. And so the prospect of spending a whole life pretending to believe in something that I didn't believe in and that I thought was actually harmful, I could not do it.
Yeah.
For anybody.
Yeah. It makes sense. It's too painful to do it the other way. Like, it's too painful to pretend. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and at that point, it wasn't just about me. It was about my son too, and the way I was taught was that he was evil. And I was just looking at my beautiful little boy who is just the kindest kid you've ever met and just so sweet and helpful and loving. And I was like, no, nobody can tell me that this kid was born evil. And I'm not going to tell him that.
No. No. Well, I think that's wonderful. I think it's so good that you've just managed to just change all of that. So yeah, just amazing. Okay, so I know this is going, like in terms of what we've just talked about in the timeline, this is going back in time.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to hear about, I think it must have been in Asia, but where you
Mm-hmm.
were like an undercover missionary or something? Like,
Yeah,
can you tell? Because that's a very 007 kind of story. I want to
it
hear
really was. Oh my God,
about
it was insane. Okay, so we had been married maybe about 6 months, and or less even. I don't know. So we were in our first apartment, getting used to being married, and we were talking a lot about being missionaries, which was something I had never wanted to do. Like, uh, I just was never interested in it. It wasn't like my calling. But he always had like wanderlust, and always wanted to go everywhere and see everything. And I think that he interpreted that as like God wants him to go overseas and be a missionary. So he kind of pushed me in that direction. And because I didn't know myself, I kind of took that on for myself. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll be a missionary too. We'll be missionaries together. And this is our calling. And so he woke up one morning and he came into the living room where I was having breakfast. And he said, okay, so I just had this dream and I think God is calling us to this country. And it was a country that I had barely heard of. Like I had heard of it, but like, I don't think I could point to it on a map. In Asia. And I was like, oh, okay. So from that moment on, we started fundraising to go to this country. And we contacted some people and we were like, hey, do you know anybody in this country that we could like work with or serve with or whatever? And everybody was like, well, it's a closed country. So I'll have to like refer you to a friend, to a friend, to a friend and send like encrypted emails.
and can I just say you're not, because I know when we spoke last time, you can't say the country because of what you were, because of the work you did, right?
Exactly. Because, I'm safe now because I've been gone so long, but there are still people that I know who are there. And if they got out that, what they're doing, they could be in big trouble. So, we ended up finding a group over there that we were familiar with, and we went over and joined them. And I, like the first night there, I just walked into our apartment and just broke down sobbing. Like it was so foreign and so different. And like, I was so unhappy, like knowing that, because we went there thinking we were going for life. Like we had no plans to come back.
Oh, wow. Ever. Oh, wow. It's like a life mission. And you, when you went there, you went and like, what was your cover? Because you were undercover missionary. But
right. So we were teaching English.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the classic, everybody does.
Yeah, to adults or kids?
Yes, it was like 17-year-olds and up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it was like an independent English school, and it was run by Americans, so it was like automatically credible. So it was, it was fine. I actually enjoyed teaching English, but everything else about that place was it was so hard. It was so bleak. Just the culture of the country is very stifled and oppressive. They don't encourage free thought in any way, shape, or form.
So more oppressive than your upbringing?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Very,
it's saying something. So. Saying something, then isn't it? So
because there's not even like a cover of love, like or trying to pretend that it's love. It's just rules.
And so how does it work when you're an undercover missionary? How do you, because you're there teaching English, but how do you convert people?
So we would teach our students English classes, and then we would take our students, we would invite them down to the coffee shop or whatever, and we would say, we're going to have like a conversation club so you can come and practice your English. And so, and everybody there is so eager to learn English that they just jumped on it. So they came to the conversation club, and we would kind of like pay attention to who seemed more curious and receptive to us. And then we would kind of seek those people out and say, hey, do you want to like go for a walk or hang out or get coffee? And we would introduce the gospel to them.
Wow. It's because I know like this was obviously not your intent. And it's obviously you're doing it because you in that mindset, you're there to help them not go to hell. That's
right.
Right. correct me if I'm wrong, right? But
no, that's correct.
Your intentions are good, and you want to help them to not go to hell. But when hearing it from the outside, and maybe even yourself can hear it, I don't know, but in perspective, it's a very predatory behavior. Which it's a classic one, even for anything else in life.
Right.
People who you're basically grooming someone, and that it's across all industries, you know. And that's. Yeah, my God.
Yeah, and because
religion is such a whew.
Yeah, and it's a predominantly Muslim country.
Yeah.
And it's just so hard to think about. Like, there was one guy that we did end up converting him to Christianity, and he got baptized. And when he told his family, they completely disowned him. And so we basically wrecked his life.
But I mean, it's and then maybe he's happy somewhere. Maybe being shunned was the best thing. I mean, you know,
it could be. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like for you haven't exactly been welcomed into your new lifestyle by your family, you know, like so.
Yeah.
But would you have it any other way? I mean, it's also sometimes it's not so much about what we do or say; it's more about, you know, people accepting that's your growth and that's your path,
right.
And you don't have to understand. You don't even have to agree. But it's about acceptance and respect, you know. Unless someone is out there trying to kill everyone, then you put your foot down. But it's this is very different, right? This is different. But but we know all of us inadvertently hurt people or ruin someone's life without even knowing it. And so but the difference that you actually come from on the other side and you realize different things. So that's what sets you apart.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful I wasn't more successful in converting people. Like, I think I don't think I had like a lot of success over there, which is great.
Well, it didn't sound like you had your heart in it, you know?
Well, it's like I did and I didn't. Like, I felt like I had a foot in that world that I was committed to, and then I had a foot back home where I was so homesick.
So how did you leave that place? Oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
Oh, no. I was just going to say I was also pregnant. So I was tired all the time. It was really hard to be fully invested in anything.
So how did you, because you and your husband thought you were going to be there for life. So how did you leave? Like, how did you end up deciding to leave?
We got an email that was from just a made up email address that said, "I know why you're here, and we won't stand for it. And this is not what our country is about. And you're trying to destroy our culture. And basically, like, if you don't leave, we'll make you leave." Wow.
Yeah. You're basically being threatened.
Oh, we were definitely being threatened. And so we were scared. Yeah.
Yeah.
we didn't know exactly what they had in mind. So we contacted our organization who had, headquarters in another country, and they were telling us to take different routes home from school and, just try to protect ourselves in any way we could, and lead unpredictable lives basically until we could get out of there. So we were at university studying the language, and one of our school officials came in and said, like, "You need to go down to immigrations now. They're calling for you." So they called my husband in because it's a very patriarchal society. They didn't really feel the need to see me. So they just pulled him in, asked him if he was proselytizing. And he said, well, if
he was what?
Proselytizing. Sorry. Just like trying to convert people.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So he said, well, I'm speaking the truth that I know to be true. And if that comes out about talking about my religion, then so be it. So yeah, basically yes. And so they were like, okay, great. You have 3 days, get out. So we did.
Yeah, you had no choice.
No.
But I guess but you were happy with that decision to go home?
Well, it was weird because he was heartbroken.
Oh.
And my husband was heartbroken, and I was secretly elated, but I didn't want him to know that. So I was, like inside, I was kind of like jumping for joy. And on the outside, I was like, oh man, this sucks. We're being persecuted. This is awful. But also like, yay. Yeah.
It doesn't sound like you wanted to stay there.
No, I didn't.
So I guess all of the opening of the relationship, all of that happened after that chapter. So,
Yeah.
okay, so can you tell me, because I mean, I look at your art on your website and on your Instagram account, and your art is very uplifting. Like, it's very light, like the colors, there's a lot of light on it. It's not like very beautiful light. Like, I would just love
Thank
to
you.
have it on my wall. Yeah. So can you tell me a bit about your art? Like, was it a coping mechanism to all the existential angst you had when you were growing up?
Yeah, I truly think it was. I mean, I don't remember when I started. People always ask me, when I started painting, and I honestly don't remember. So I must have been really young when I started painting. And so, it was like every Christmas, every birthday, I would get tons of art supplies because that was like books and art was like all I was interested in as a kid. And so I just, I knew from a really early age that I wanted to be a professional artist someday. And I never wavered on that. Like I started choosing a major for college and I knew it was going to be art. I eventually went with illustration because I thought maybe I would do like children's book illustration or something. I got a major in illustration and that was a really great foundation for my career, but I kind of ended up like swinging a little more towards fine art painting. But anyway, so between making art, like visual art and writing, I wrote a lot of stories and poetry growing up. I think that was my way of just like making sense of the world. It wasn't that I had to show it to anybody. It was just mine and my feelings and my thoughts and my curiosity. And so it felt like kind of the only piece that was mine. And a lot of it was pretty dark, actually. Back then, I don't think I had a lot of lightness to my art. There wasn't a lot of freedom in it. It was just what I was feeling, and that was mostly depressed and anxious. So there was a lot of darkness, but I think it helped me kind of get it out of my system in a way. And I actually didn't do any art. Like after we got married, I didn't do like any art for years. I didn't do it when we were first married. I didn't do it when we were overseas. We accidentally got involved in a cult after we got back in the United States, and I didn't do any there either.
So wait, you got involved in the cult, another one? Because
even more of a cult.
What? Okay, wait, I didn't know this. Can you? What was that?
Well, okay, so we came back to the U.S. and we had no jobs.
So how old are you then?
Oh God. Let's see. I was
late 20s.
23 or 20, almost 24.
Yeah, because you're 26 now, right?
No, I'm 31.
31. Sorry. Okay, so you were 23, 24.
Yeah. So I was
so still quite young.
I was quite young, heavily pregnant, still a Christian. And we came back to the US and we didn't have like jobs or career prospects or anything. And like we had left our home city. And so we were living with my parents trying to figure out what we were going to do next. And since my husband was like basically in charge, he decided he wanted to go to Bible college for a couple of years and just study the Bible and like hang out with Christians. So I was like, okay, whatever. So,
and actually, I just want to point out something. Sorry, because I don't know if we said that at the beginning, but like the evangelical Christians that the community you grew up in, like takes the Bible word for word, right? It's like literal.
Kind of. I mean, so like the environment I grew up in took it mostly literally from like a Western standpoint. It wasn't like word for word literally, but it was like they would read it and interpret it through a very Western 21st century lens.
Okay.
Yeah. So we went to this Bible college out in Wyoming, and it was in a town of 300 people, and it was an hour from any other town. It was like completely isolated. And this Bible college, like it was, we had a weird feeling like right off the bat because everybody who went there, they went there because their family went there. And we were like literally the only ones who had ever looked it up on Google and came. Okay. So it was just very like, oh, okay, this is kind of strange, like kind of inbred and weird. And then we found out like kind of through the lessons that they did take the Bible literally word for word, again, from a Western view, but they also thought like there's a verse that says, God's talking to Abraham, and he says, I'm going to make your descendants like the sand of the sea, basically saying there's going to be a whole lot of you. And so they took that as like literal, like every grain of sand. That's the number of descendants he's going to have. And yeah. So obviously he and I both thought that was extremely stupid. And so we were pushing back in class, like against our teachers, like a lot. And they didn't like that. And so things kind of quickly turned on us, and we found ourselves again, like they would be preaching to the whole school, but they would be preaching against us. Like they would be saying things like, well, beware of anybody who doesn't take the Bible literally and who thinks for themselves and whatever. And it was obviously directed at us. Mm-hmm. And so we made it to the end of the year, but we were starting to feel like it was all kind of coming in on us. They weren't directly threatening us, but we could feel it. So we left. At that time, I had already had my son. We left. We headed back to where we had been living before we moved overseas. And that was the beginning of my deconstruction, was that Bible school, because I was seeing how things looked when you took them to the literal extreme. Because I felt like, honestly, that they were being more honest in their Christianity, because they weren't skipping past the uncomfortable parts. They were saying, oh yeah, well, the part where God told somebody to, or he told his people to go into the city and kill all the men and women and then dash the babies on the rocks and kill them. Yeah, he did that. That was real. Whereas like growing up, I think I had heard people say like, oh, that story, it's an allegory, or like he didn't really do that, or, maybe whatever. But like I was hearing them say at this Bible college that they were embracing all the things in the Bible that just didn't make any sense to me. And it like turned my stomach.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of fundamentalist groups, they will take things really literally, which gives no room for flexibility and to adapt to, 2000 years later today, right. But just to understand like where you grew up, because I understood there was like, like you mentioned, fundamentalist Christian, but evangelical, right? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So which part of it was fundamentalist? It was like, because obviously the school you went to was even more extreme. Mm-hmm. You got, because like you said, they don't believe in being gay. What was the other things? Oh yeah, and born equal. But what was the other things?
Yeah, so they were really big on sex and like not having it.
Okay, so big on not having it. Yeah, okay.
Big on not having sex. There was a really really weird movement in the 90s about sexual purity. And like early 2000s. So there was this thing, they would have like conferences for young men where they would teach them how to like get rid of impure thoughts and not lust after anybody. And then they would give the girls, like the fathers would give them purity rings, and they would have this almost like wedding ceremony kind of thing where they would like promise to their fathers that they would stay sexually pure and until they got married. And it was all very
yeah, it's funny because that extreme purity is almost like, it's almost kinky, like in the worst sense, right? Because promising your dad you'll be a virgin is almost like it's almost like he owns your sexuality, and it's like, no, I'm not going to promise him that.
No, that's exactly what it is. Yeah,
because it was never his to begin with. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's the other part, like you said, like, if people don't believe in the same, they're like the infidels, and that's definitely a very like extreme way of looking at things too, I think. So I mean, I like how you sort of like totally moved from that to an artist living with your girlfriend and constructing your belief system. So like, can I ask, like, now what would you, I guess the way would be categorized, so what sort of belief system, like what do you believe in, or if you believe in something?
No, I would say I'm an agnostic atheist.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I don't believe in God, but I also know that I don't understand a lot of things about the world. And I've had things happen to me that I can't explain, like rationally, as much as I would like to. So I guess I don't believe in God. I don't hold to any religion. I'm actually pretty anti-religion in general, but I do recognize that there's a possibility that there's some kind of spiritual or energetic force in the world that I don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I don't have anything against religion itself. For me, it's like the institution of it, which,
Right.
is so intolerant. I mean, I tried many, like in my 20s, I was on the search of, what do I believe in? What's everything? What does it all mean? And I mean, I tried many different ones, and all of them, the reason why I ended up every time leaving and not enjoying it anymore is because they always had to bash other belief systems.
Right.
And if you weren't completely aligned with them, they would be like praying for you for your salvation. I mean, I've had it happen to me where I sit down and they were praying for my salvation. And I was like, I don't know if I'm flattered or offended right now. Like, I just did not know. And they were so serious. I was like, okay, I'll let them pray. But it's so weird. But so I mean, I understand. I believe in a lot of things, but I don't belong to any particular religion. I believe in spirituality. I believe in science. I believe in the universe. Like, I think there's a lot of things I can't explain, and the way I find comfort is in believing there's some things bigger than me. And I also know that I don't know, like, because I haven't died and come back. I haven't died and gone, by the way, this is what happens. So I don't know, but when movements are so intense in their belief system, it's like this arrogance of, well, we know the truth and you know nothing. Everyone else is wrong. And I think that's the thing that I have a problem with. And that becomes very dangerous,
Oh yeah. Because it's putting ideas above people. And I can't get behind that. Like, I think where I've come to is realizing that, like, maybe miracles do exist, but I think they're the miracles that we create with our own brains. And, like, we don't even understand how our brains do it sometimes, but, like, they do it, like, they're like, our brains and our intuition are so much more complicated and big than we can understand. And I've only seen, like, little glimpses of it probably since I have gotten to know myself a little better. But I think, like, that's where I stand, is like prioritizing my own intuition about things and prioritizing love in all situations. Because if I'm being honest about loving other people and loving myself, I'm not going to intentionally hurt other people.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Absolutely agree with you. Yeah. I think, because if we're miserable, we can't be nice around people, and we're just a nightmare.
No.
Whereas if, you learn to look after yourself, you're a better person to others. If you were to, look back at your, normally I'd say 18, but I'd even say like 12 in your case. If you just to look back, like, what would you tell yourself? Like, what is this thing that you've learned through all of this experience?
I think that I would tell myself, it's so hard, because I think back then could not have heard a lot of what I wish I could tell her. But I think I wish I would tell her that it's okay to feel what she's feeling and to open herself up to listening to her intuition, because her intuition is going to guide her better than any kind of outside influence ever could.
Yeah.
And I think I would remind her that it's okay to be sad, but she's not always going to stay there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's definitely okay to be sad. And I know, like you mentioned about you said that you were unmedicated, almost like it was a, because I know in the US they, it's quite big out there with, medicating people, when we're feeling even just a slight anxiety or stress for exams, where over here in Europe is more like, you're supposed to be anxious about exam, you're supposed to be stressed out, but there's always like a certain tipping point where it's like, okay, no, you need something different, like something is deeper than just a bit of nerves and anxiety over exams. But that may have been, obviously I don't know how bad it was, and obviously
it was pretty bad.
It was it would have felt awful no matter what. But like, maybe also in a way, like that was a way of, even then, it's you got to know yourself on a different level. And I'm glad that you've come out, that you didn't do anything,
right?
Something that you can come back from. And
right,
but yeah, because your art is just so wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm such a fan.
Yeah, I mean, it really is like my. It's still like my best coping mechanism, because yesterday I was feeling really angsty about an argument I had with my mom, and I was kind of freaking out about it. And then I was like, what am I doing? Just like sitting here and worrying. I'm going to go paint. So I painted like the whole day. And then I was just like, oh, I feel so much better.
Is that your daily life now? You paint basically the whole day, every day?
I would say I paint most of the day, probably about 2 to 3 days a week.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It used to be every single day. It was every single day, but, it's gotten harder in recent months, just with my physical health being kind of unstable. Sometimes I can't physically make it up the stairs to my studio, or I can't sit up long enough to paint.
Yeah, because we didn't even mention that. Yeah, because you have your symptoms are like chronic pain and fatigue. Is that what it is?
Yeah, chronic pain, fatigue, my blood pressure and my pulse kind of swing up and down wildly. It's a lot of things. It's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and so it's all the connective tissue in my body is too lax, so it's like too loose. So I'll like partially dislocate my joints a lot.
Yeah,
and my skin is really stretchy, and it affects everything from like digestion to sleep to like literally everything you can think of. So it limits my mobility a lot. And so there are days when I can't walk and I have to use a wheelchair, or I can walk a little bit and I have to use crutches or something like that. But it's just very day to day for me. So I don't have a routine. I just make work when I can.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I just don't even know how, I'm just really, I don't know if the word impressed is like, it sounds condescending, but it's not. I don't mean it that way. But I'm definitely impressed, like, and almost wish we obviously we didn't bring it up. And I guess it's also a testament to how you see yourself, because that's not the first thing you said, like in the interview, we didn't, and I forgot about it actually.
Right.
But you're dealing with that as well. And I remember when we were like messaging each other on Facebook, was that you mentioned about how your mental state is better even though your physical state is declining. How do you make it work?
I cry a lot.
Yeah.
I do. But I think actually I see that as a sign of strength these days, because when I was younger, when I was in like late high school and college, I was severely depressed, but I never cried. Like I didn't know how to cry. It was so weird. It was like I would cry maybe once a year. And It was so unhealthy because I had all this, like I had rage and sadness and everything inside of me, and it never came out. But now it's like I'll sprain my ankle and I'll just sob to my girlfriend for an hour, and then she'll cuddle me, and then I'm okay. I just I've learned to feel what I'm feeling and get it out, or I'll have a day where I'm so frustrated because there's something I want to do and I can't do it, and I'll cry or I'll scream or I'll, whatever. And then it's over and I can move on. And I would say like I'm mostly happy, and that's like the first time I can say that in my life. So I'm happy about that.
And I don't know if I can ask you this, but what does the future hold then now for you?
Well, thankfully, I don't have the kind of Ehlers-Danlos that is going to shorten my life.
Good.
Some people do, but I should be able to live, a nice, long, normal life in that sense. It's going to be painful. It's not going to get better. Most people do lose mobility as they get older. And, I'm 31 and I'm in a wheelchair a quarter of the time, maybe. So that's going to get worse. But I do have hope, that there's going to be some new treatments.
Yeah.
And as science progresses, they're going to do some good research that's going to come out with some answers. So I'm hopeful for that. And I'm just so thankful that I have my family and I have art to keep me sane. Like, I think art is still not only my best way to get like my feelings out, but it's also the best distraction from my pain. Like I don't take hardly any pain medicine at all, including like Tylenol or anything, because whenever I feel the pain, I mostly just distract myself, and art is like my best way to distract myself.
So you've learned to control or to use your mind in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I gotta say, like, this is humbling because the amount of time a lot of us just complain for a headache. And it's just, just wow. I think it's fantastic. You definitely, this cannot have been easy. And it's not something I want to keep banging on about because, but it's, you're definitely, I'm just really happy actually that, I hope this is bringing a bit of awareness as well with the conditions. So, I think it's important that they do something in research and get some treatments going.
Mm-hmm. I know, because it's actually way more common than people know about. And even a lot of doctors don't know about it, especially if the doctors, well, from my experience, if they're over the age of about 30 to 40, they might have never learned about it in medical school.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are undiagnosed and they're suffering, and they're being told that they're crazy, and it's awful. So I'm just, any way I can. That's the only reason I bring up being disabled most of the time, is because I want other people to recognize the symptoms and know that they can get help.
Yeah, but it's very in no way do you. That's not the thing I think about when I think about you, and when I listen to you, when I listen to you now when we're talking, because it never came up, and I forgot about it, and it's
That's good.
Yeah, and I think exactly. We don't realize how lucky we are when we don't have, genetic condition like this, or we don't go around with chronic pain every day, or all of these things that you mentioned. And I think it's a good reminder. And I think, if you can do it, for fuck's sake, so can we. That's what I mean?
Yeah.
I think, and can you please tell us where we can find, like, where everyone can find you, because your art is just fantastic. You need to push everyone to go and see your art, and buy your art.
Yeah, I would love that. Mm-hmm. I would say probably the best place to find me is on Instagram. I'm on there far more than I care to admit. So it's my handle is I am Kelly Johnson, and then my website is kellyjohnsonpainting.com. And let's see. Oh, so I have a link to my Etsy shop on both my website and my Instagram.
Yeah.
But like, if you want to say hi to me, just pop into my Instagram DMs and say hi.
And does your Etsy shop have a name?
It's Kelly Marie Watercolor.
Thank you so much. This was so lovely, Kelly. I'm really glad. Thank you so much for being game and answering all the questions.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a good first experience.
Okay, good. Cherry popped.
Yeah.
And that's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe on iTunes, follow on Spotify, and whichever way the other platforms let you show love, please do it. That's how you can support this show. Drop me your questions or suggestions for future episodes via the website at angie-s.com, or find me on Instagram. I have 2 accounts. One is Too Old for This Shit Podcast, and the other one is Health Lifestylist. Links in the show notes. See you next week, and until then,
using health inappropriately.